Hey guys, welcome to Life Off the Mat. I'm Katie Williamson.
Kevin Roland.
Anthony Polanco.
And Katie and Roland. Yeah. Here we go.
You can find me on Instagram at legit Katie Williamson and online www.katiewilliamsoncoaching.com. And you can find Kevin Roland on Instagram
At KWRCCO or my website, www.kwrcco.com.
You can find me at @pstyle on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look me up, Anthony Polanco, or anthonypolanco.com. Check it out. Got a ton of stuff on there for you.
That's good, because I feel like we're a little somber.
I don't feel that way. I got it all.
Life off the mat. The first episode we talked about life on the mat.
We did, which I thought was kind of funny because we had this whole list of topics that we talked about of like, hey, what would be cool to go over? And then we talked about Jiu-Jitsu. So
The entire time.
On and off, as Anthony
On and
put
off.
it. On and off the mat. The switch.
On and off, yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, it's good because, you know, like we said, Jiu-Jitsu is essentially what brought us together. So, you know, what better way to start off the podcast than by talking about one of the many things that unites us and that we have in common.
Yeah. So what's weird is like we all have, obviously everyone has different things in common, but each of us, you know, we didn't know each other, but we all are kind of in related fields professionally and outside of jiu-jitsu, there are some commonalities in our professional lives or personal lives, even with like, you know, just our passions for personal development and helping other people.
Right. And mental health.
And mental health as well. You know,
and overcoming just a lot of hardship.
Yeah. Common stories.
For sure.
And so that's one really cool thing about us coming together and being able to explore that. I think on the podcast is like, I think what the main reason why we came together, right? To kind of talk about how people in jiu-jitsu all have different lives and we're all, you know, sharing this experience together. And so just, you know, coming together, we're able to kind of share our commonalities and just kind of talk about life and share our stories from life. And we're a cross section of the gym, you know, and so that's really cool.
Right, because, you know, one of the things that we talk about is that our paths probably wouldn't have crossed if it weren't for jiu-jitsu. And then even still, you know, it's been so many years before we actually sat down and talked about our life off the mat and passions and things that we enjoy. And yeah, so we decided to hit record.
Yeah. And, you know, me and Kevin have stayed in touch since we started training. Kevin was training a little bit before me. You and I didn't know each other.
No, we
but
didn't.
I knew you from the gym, from the community, and I've seen your stuff online, so I knew that you and I were like-minded, but we just never had a chance to talk. And so, you know, that's what's really cool is like you meet people in the gym, never get a chance to talk to them, even if they're super similar to you.
Right.
And so this was a cool chance for us to kind of all come together. We all have similarities, even though Kevin and I have known each other for 4 years, have not had a chance to have a personal conversation until we planned on doing this. So it's like you could know someone for years and years, like we said the last time. You could know someone years and years and not have a chance to talk to them, even if you love them and you consider them friend. So
right. And there's two levels to that. I think, you know, realizing that, you know, you can love people and be bonded to them without knowing what they do, you know, and really develop what I'd call like the soul connection with people. And then also trusting that when the time is right, it gets to like come to light. And that's cool. I've had that happen a few times, well, more than a few times, but with our women's program too. Same thing, you know, just rolling with women and sharing the mat with them on the team, you know, day after day, week after week. And, you know, then all of a sudden, like, you share this moment on the mat. And, you know, for me, I just realized, like, hey, I'm not alone. You know, like, yeah, we roll together, but it goes so much deeper than that. And, you know, it's just such a cool experience.
Yeah. And that's one thing I really love about it is like, you know, everybody, we've all got similarities, even to the people who are super different in the gym. And, you know, you don't need to have all the, I guess, the societal, like, metrics the same. to kind of have, you know, those people be your best friends. And yeah, so, you know, I think it's really interesting to come together with you guys and just kind of learn more about what you guys do. And hopefully we can cover some of that stuff here, because I'd like to just kind of get to know more about you guys on a personal level.
I thought you were going to say on the mat. I'm like,
On
no,
the mat.
Anthony, this part
It's
is off the
mat.
mat.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So on that topic, what are your favorite jiu-jitsu moves?
Right.
Oh.
Zeke.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it was cool to have actually you at the gym the other day, Kevin. Kevin came by the gym, visited Elite Team Clovis. We just opened Elite Team Clovis like a couple weeks ago. We had the program, but now it's Elite Team Clovis, so that's really cool. It's cool to have Kevin out. You're always invited. You're more
Thank
than
you.
welcome. Yeah, that's really neat. How did that go, Kevin?
Great.
Yeah,
It's
great
always
time.
tough when you go into a different dojo,
Mm-hmm.
but when you see your face, and I mean, you see a few familiar faces, it's a family away from your family.
Yeah.
It really is. And Isaac had a big impact on my growth and development. He's the first one that really made me focus on breathing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he made me slow down.
Yeah.
Breathe. Now's your opportunity. He really taught me that value, and I use it
That's
to this
cool.
day.
That's good.
Every roll, I have Isaac in my ear
Mm-hmm.
about breathing.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it was neat to come train with you guys.
Mm-hmm. So you work in Fresno.
About 3 days a week in Fresno.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah. So
Katie, you work in Fresno.
I do work in Fresno. Yeah, so I commute an hour both ways every day.
So that's what's another strange thing is we all met because we trained Elite Team Visalia. I moved to Fresno and started training here. You guys work here, train there, and yeah.
Well, when you put it like that.
Yeah, that's super weird. But yeah, so that's really cool. So Katie, what exactly is your work, your coaching?
Yeah, so my day job right now, I do work up in Fresno, and I do team development, leadership trainings for employees up here. But like you said, I do have my own business as well, Katie Williamson Coaching. And so with that, you know, I do team development and, you know, the same team development, leadership trainings for nonprofits and for businesses as well. Which is super cool. And then I also work as a freelance writer. I've worked on some projects writing articles and doing some editing and putting like speech writing as well. But that also goes from kind of creation of like, okay, what are you wanting to talk about? And then one of the things that I'm really good at is like kind of taking all of the ideas, kind of just, for lack of a better word vomit it out. And then as the other person's talking, I can start to see the common thread that goes between it and then put it into something that's a story that's really compelling and hooks the audience. So I do that. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, I'm writing a book.
little thing.
Yeah, a little thing, which actually I'm finishing up editing it right now, and that's going to be done in the next few days. And so working on getting that published, and that's a whole other story too, and do some speaking, and yeah, that's
Very
the stuff
cool.
that I really love doing.
That's neat.
Yeah.
And how do you feel like that, like what's your relation, how do you relate that to jiu-jitsu? Like what's your relationship between your professional life and jiu-jitsu? Like how do you justify or how do you rectify the symbiotic relationship between those two things in your life?
Ooh, my mind is going so many different directions. One, jiu-jitsu keeps me sane, right? And gives me that outlet of connecting with people also, pushing myself, challenging myself. I would say that another way why jiu-jitsu is so important to me is because we talked about this in the first episode, but it really gives me like a hands-on, in the moment, like opportunity to test my will and my drive, and prove to myself that I'm going to keep showing up and fighting through the difficult decisions and when I'm hitting a brick wall, you know. And so to me, that's a big parallel that I take, especially as I'm building my own business, on the side is, it's challenging, and you guys both know this.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's times where like I'm up into the next morning, and getting a few hours of sleep and
Right.
getting up and going to my day job, because that's what I have to do, because I know that that's what's going to get me to the next level that I want to be at. And so jiu-jitsu, it reminds me that no matter how tired I am, there's always a little bit more in me if I keep pushing. That's a big thing. What else? Another thing that is really important to me and has been a big part of my journey over the last few years has been really understanding and kind of tapping into like the duality that exists inside of us and inside of our world. And you can look at that however you want. So whether you want to say like the yin yang, the masculine, feminine, but just that duality. And so why I bring that up is because jiu-jitsu gives me that opportunity to be a warrior and to be savage and to show myself what I'm capable of and how strong I am and how deep that goes, and also hold the space and still be true to myself of being the kind and compassionate and soft, but in a strong way, and having space for both of those in my life. And that's been something that's been really important to me, because the more I press into that and the deeper I explore that and go into that, it's like I keep getting to see this greater depth that exists within me. And the more I expand one, the more I have the opportunity to allow the other one to expand also. And so jiu-jitsu gives me that opportunity to hold both.
How about you, Kev? How do you relate your business to your jiu-jitsu, like to you doing jiu-jitsu? What do you think why do you think that who you are, it relates to both so well?
I got into working for myself about 15 years ago. Always been an entrepreneur at heart. I was the little kid in school selling rocks, pet rocks, before there were pet rocks. I told you that story. I think they stole my idea, but we'll talk about that some other time. So an opportunity came up. I was working for Nestle, and they sold the division I was working for. I was an HR director for them at that time. And so I decided at that point to try to do some of the same things I was doing for them, for other people. So I started doing that, and my background really in human resources. I was always responsible for the security of a facility, operations, worked in the operations side as well. And so when I went out on my own, and that's something that I really was attracted to you guys about. I could see that entrepreneurial spirit in you, and it's just getting planted. It's just popping up, that's exciting. So, and I like to rejuvenate that in myself. A lot of jiu-jitsu rejuvenated me in so many areas of my life. I'd spent about 15 years where I literally had to use old golf clubs as canes to get up and down the stairs. My back, I got blown disc in my back and everything, and couldn't drive for very long, couldn't sit for very long, and it was kind of a sad life to be somebody in their 40s and be in that kind of condition. So jiu-jitsu brought me to that. At some time we'll probably talk about how we got to that, but jiu-jitsu was a need for me at that time. And I reached out. I went to the Gracies down in Huntington Beach or Torrance at that time, and went through that 1 week Gracie survival tactics for security and law enforcement, and realized in 1 week that 1 week wasn't going to do it.
Wasn't enough, yeah.
This wasn't like some other training programs I'd went to train to trainer. I was going to bring it back and be able to teach other people.
Right.
Yeah.
In a week.
In a week, yeah. Did not take long to realize that. But as I got more and more into that, and then I found Elite, I'd met Tom, our professor, a few years back in a meeting that was talking about some martial arts and stuff. So I knew that's where I wanted to go, was to that dojo. And so once I went there, started kind of doing the jiu-jitsu, and more so for security at that time. A lot of my business, human resources consulting, did some security consulting, organizational development, and now I do a lot more with C-suite folks and kind of help coach them and maneuver through some of the people issues that people have to deal with in business every day, at some of them at very high levels. And so that was always something I was very good at. I got a lot of experience in doing that through my days at Nestle and just through the work that I had done. But jiu-jitsu kind of reinvigorated me in a lot of ways, because I was going down a path physically where at 52, and that's when I started jiu-jitsu, I was standing in front of the bathroom doing squats. That was the first exercise I did to get to jiu-jitsu. I just do squats holding onto the sink, and slowly turned into stairs, slowly turned into other workouts. And then once I got in there and got just a little bit of that taste of jiu-jitsu, like you guys, I was addicted. I was hooked. Something that I really wanted to do all the time. Like I said in the beginning, I tried to do it every day, and it about killed me.
Right.
You know, I wasn't built for that. But it allowed me to open my mind up in another way, kind of feel that energy of other people, gave me an outlet. You know, personal things in my life were going on, and having somewhere to be able to turn it all off. Because for that 1 hour, hour and a half,
Right.
you really can think about nothing else but that.
Right.
And that was very therapeutic to me, to be able to have that time. And then it just, as you go, and you guys know, it means something different each step of the journey.
Right.
It really applies into your life. It applies how you're dealing with things, and
Yeah.
That really brought me into the fold of that. So, so I do consulting for different companies, and do trainings. I train hospital and security, emergency room personnel on de-escalation techniques and things like that, as well as organizational development type stuff. And it's amazing to think how much jiu-jitsu improved my business life. Just by the way I detached from the things I was doing, because sometimes I have to, in situations where people may get arrested because of the things that I'm interacting with them about, or they lose their jobs, whatever the case may be. And sometimes you're the person they point that anger at, so there's some negative energy that you're absorbing through all that process. That we talk about this with ER folks all the time. They think they get burnt out from the job they're doing, and they quit and they go somewhere else. 3 months later, they're burnt out all over again, and it's really what they're doing away from their job that doesn't allow them to detach from what they absorb all day long.
Right.
So, so I'm kind of a perfect example of that within myself. It allowed me to rejuvenate myself, realign with what I really wanted to do, and pick the people that I was going to work with. Where in the past it was more financially driven.
Yeah.
Now it's more principle driven. I got to believe in
Right.
what people are doing for me to align with them, and then that's my best self. And I think that's very parallel to my jiu-jitsu life. Because you find those folks that come into the dojo who don't stop before they hurt somebody. And there's a little system in place where the upper belts will make sure that person's addressed. Sometimes verbally, sometimes non-verbally, which you'd probably rather have it verbally.
Right.
So, yeah, just had a super impact on realigning my life mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. Yeah.
I want to add something too. As you were talking, Kevin, it made me think, as I look back over these last few years of my journey, I've been very driven my entire life. I've always pushed myself to to be the best, to give my best at everything. And, I've had big dreams and, pushed to achieve them throughout my life. And one of the things that jiu-jitsu has taught me at the last gym that I was at, I remember we were rolling and the coach walked by and just quietly, told me, Katie, stop giving up. And I was like, what? I'm not giving up. But I thought about that, and he was right. Somebody would get 3/4 of the way through a pass, and rather than fighting back, I would just give up and let them pass and then fight from side control. And when he said that and he pointed that out and I realized it, it made me change how I was showing up to roll. And to even when I was 3/4 of the way past, I would fight back instead of choosing to fight from a bad position. And once I started doing that on the mat, I started to see that principle translate off the mat as well. I used to, and I mean, this still comes up, something that I have to fight, but being aware of accepting what I get versus getting what I accept, and being very clear on what is it exactly that I want and fighting for what I want rather than leaving it up to the other person to give me what they think I deserve, or what they want to give me. And as I made that parallel, I started to see, both personally and professionally, starting to apply that principle as well. And so choosing to fight back and to be aware of, what I want and what I deserve, and operating from that place, not a place of arrogance, but a place of confidence that just because I'm 3/4 of the way past doesn't mean that I'm gonna let you have an even worse or a better position for you and a worse place for me to fight from. I'm gonna be mindful of how can I pivot what I'm currently doing and regard so that I'm not moving backwards. I might have slowed down, but I'm not taking steps backward. I'm still focused on my objective. So that's another thing that I've seen for myself over the last few years. That's been more on a personal level and a personal mindset, but I think we all know how important your mindset is in what the outward behaviors are, what outward behaviors manifest in life. So
yeah, it seems like that's one inevitable aspect of life when you are coaching and consulting is a perfect example of a self-employment or any self-employment experience that you have to be able to accept things that are out of your control happening, and it's such a roller coaster. There's so much that you can't there's so many conditions that you can't control, that jiu-jitsu kind of does help you get used to the fact that things will happen, and the best thing you can do is address problems right as they come up, and to keep trying. Just don't be discouraged by bad things happening to you, because bad things happen all the time, and
right.
And when you're self-employed, you're constantly getting the waves are crashing into you, and you have to maintain a certain level of emotional dexterity just to operate and not quit, not give up. And jiu-jitsu helps with that.
For sure.
I started working for myself and then found jiu-jitsu, I think 18 months later or so. And I was just constantly getting crushed by failure, just emotionally crushed by it. And I knew I wanted to be self-employed. I really didn't feel like I had any other choice. It was what I needed to do. And I just couldn't, I didn't have the dexterity, the emotional fortitude to withstand all the failure, that you have to go through in the beginning. And so failing in the beginning of jiu-jitsu wasn't hard, because I was already losing in my professional life. I was just getting started, I was barely scraping by and constantly getting rejected by clients because I didn't know how to pitch yet. And you have to get used to that. You have to get comfortable with learning something new, and jiu-jitsu kind of helps you accept that failure is just a part of the game,
Right.
And so I needed that. I needed something to make me tougher, I knew what I wanted, but I wasn't tough enough to get it, and I knew I needed something to make me tougher,
100%.
not just like physically tougher, but which that helps too, the self-defense aspect and the confidence of knowing I can defend myself, but mentally and emotionally tougher,
For sure. So Anthony, you want to share with us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah. So I started doing digital marketing consulting about 6 years ago. I was like spending most of my time touring in a rock band, and when that ended, because we just like split up, I got a gig doing digital marketing consulting for a bar and restaurant in Kingsburg, and
Ooh, which one?
it was called Bullfrogs. It's
Oh,
called,
yeah.
what's it
At
called?
the river?
I grew up in Kingsburg.
Yeah.
Off the river?
Off
Yeah.
the river, yeah. When
Yeah.
it was Bullfrogs, I took over the digital marketing and did it for about a year and 2 years or so.
How
But yeah,
funny.
that was my
What a
first.
small world.
Yeah, small world. My first marketing gig, and I started doing online courses and stuff, trying to because I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew that there was a path for me there. Like social media marketing wasn't really like super popular yet, but I knew it was the thing to do, So I started doing courses and stuff, and started doing freelance copywriting online just to like make money, I was working cutting hair in Visalia and working as a night janitor. Quit both and just was like, I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna manage this client, learn from online courses, and do freelance copywriting until I can get some more clients. And I basically did that. I've basically been doing that for the last 5 or 6 years, just doing digital marketing, consulting, different industries. Every year or so, I pivot into another sector that I feel like needs my help, or my service offering matches even better than the one before, and that sustains me, and it kind of helps me continue to develop my professional relationships, and it relates to. It fits into my life well. I didn't want to change my lifestyle. Like, I knew I wanted to be self-employed,
Right.
and so consulting just kind of happened, and I've just continued with it. I feel like there's so many opportunities that I'm presented every day that consulting is the only way I can possibly get those, because you're talking to people who have problems that they need help with, and oftentimes those are complex problems. And so like when you're the solution for a lot of different people's problems, like it's a really fun professional experience, but it takes time to get there,
For sure.
So it's been a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes I question, like, do I want to do this forever, or like, what is this, But I think it's just a part of my life now that I've been doing it for so long, and I want it to branch into other things, like speaking, and I just published my book, so like I'd love to continue to publish and do talks and do coaching and consulting in other avenues, that are related to me. But I found jiu-jitsu for that reason, and I needed help continuing the path of self-employment, because it's hard. It's especially in the beginning. Now I'm afloat, and I have enough relationships that I'm not afraid of like going under, And once you get in the habit of like, okay, I know how many clients I can handle, I know how to get new clients if I need to. I've just found my sweet spot. And some people want to grow like huge consulting businesses, and so at times in my life I've wanted that, but right now I'm just really happy with the freedom that consulting gives me, the ability to train whenever I want, to spend time publishing, or to spend time playing music. I write music and perform semi-regularly, and I love that. I wouldn't trade that for anything, So I'm really lucky to have found consulting, and I definitely it took a while to kind of figure out what I wanted from it. If I wanted to have like a big business and a bunch of employees, or if I just wanted to keep, like being lightweight and enjoying the lifestyle that it gives me. And I think I'm somewhere in between right now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. It's been a roller coaster though. Serious. It's been a real roller coaster.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things for me with where I'm at right now is, I've had this like big dream, for lack of a better word, that I've been like chasing, and realizing that, it's going on 7.5, maybe 8 years now. And I think part of the reason why I'm still chasing it is because I'm still becoming clear, like you said, on what exactly is that I'm
What it
going
is.
after,
Yeah.
what is it? Because you can't really build something if you don't know what exactly it is. So a lot of the work that I've done has been just gaining clarity, and some of that has come from answering the question of what do I want my life to look like, and kind of working backwards from there. And what am I passionate about? And, you know, I love helping people, and I love helping people understand themselves in a deeper way, and then being able to use that to better relate to other people also. And that's what I get to do with the team building and leadership development that I do also. And so it's interesting being on this path, and, you know, just pushing ahead and taking opportunities as they come, and learning like, okay, I like this, I don't like this as much. I can handle this volume with what I'm currently doing, and this is too much, and trying to find that sweet spot, and also being sensitive to the fact that, you know, I haven't made that jump yet to being fully on my own. And I just realized, like, in the last few months, something that I've been processing is realizing that I've actually had a lot of shame around that, because one of my biggest beliefs, and that I tell people, you know, is that if you're not changing it, then you're choosing it. And so that's been a hard pill for me to swallow. And so I've done a lot of just thinking and seeking, and where I'm at right now is realizing, like, I do have a lot of gratitude for where I'm at, because I can see how things have been developed within me in a safe place, you know, in a safe context, as I am still able to have a steady paycheck, and also realizing that, like, change is coming soon, for a number of reasons. And so it's exciting. You know, I talk about the duality a lot, and the duality for me right now is that realizing that, like, and also being mindful that I'm not getting in my own way by not just doing it.
For sure.
And so I'm still sitting in that tension, and I don't have an answer for it yet, because I'm still in the middle of it, but you know, I keep showing up. And one of the lessons that came up for me this past week, actually, I was talking with my mentor, and you know, we were talking about self-sabotage, and I asked him, I said, is it worth, like, diving into why I'm self-sabotaging right now? Like, is that even worth having the conversation? And he was like, well, what do you think? You know, that's up to you. And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? At this point, no. Because if I want to keep diving into why I'm self-sabotaging, then I'm just going to stay in that pool of, like, all cerebral, like, all in my head. Why am I not doing this? Okay, well, it's because of this self-limiting belief. So let me work on this self-limiting belief and overcome this. It's like, you know what? At the end of the day, just do it. Actually, not at the end of the day. How about, like, during business hours, you know? No, I'm just kidding.
Done.
Yeah, like, just do it. Don't worry about that, because at some point you do just have to jump.
For sure.
And so that was really big for me this last week. And yeah, it was nerve-wracking, you know? But I still picked up the phone and made the calls, and that felt really good. It wasn't perfect. Like, I stumbled around it. But that's still progress, you know?
For sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, like, you have the time. There's times in your life when, you know, you're looking at the big picture, and then sometimes you do need that granular focus. And it's hard. It's impossible to know in retrospect whether or not you wasted time self-sabotaging, or whether you really did need that time to you just needed that time to cook, you know.
Right.
And sometimes I think about that with, like, because most of my story is about, you know, after my band days ended, I basically was going through an existential crisis for a number of years before I realized it, and my life was just, like, at the bottom when I figured it out. And having these, like, aspirations, these great life aspirations, like, I wanted to be, you know, world famous and play for thousands and thousands of people, you know, and then to go to having like no meaning, assigned meaning in your life, having to rebuild that, it takes time, and you don't lose the expectations for yourself. You still have those expectations. You just don't have the vision and the fortitude to acquire it, even if you did have a vision, you know? And so, sometimes that's just a part of life that you just need to cook. You just need time to cook, you know? If things didn't work out in the past and you need to pivot, sometimes it's going to take time. You have to put it back in the oven, you know?
Right.
And it sucks because like you don't lessen your expectations for yourself, because you still want great things out of your life.
Right.
But, you know, sometimes it feels like life just takes a long time, and those times it's good to be patient. And then when things pick up, you know, the more abundant seasons, like then you can be a little bit more aggressive and you know, reckless with your output. Like, hey, I'm gonna focus on my output now because it's time to harvest, you know?
Well, and I think also the winter, like those dark seasons, those existential crises, like I've had one in my life, obviously, probably more than one. You know, that's the title of my book, essentially, is I'm Here, God, Where Are You? And it's like, you know, we're going to have those. That's just part of life. Like winter is a season every single year. It's gonna feel barren and cold and dark, and like, where's the sun? You know, and so it's, to me, having gone through those dark times and those challenging times, the joy when the sun comes out is so much deeper and so much stronger. And I look back, and one of my big lessons through my journey has been realizing that, you know, in the moment, I want to say things that hurt, like that I'm hurt by, that's bad, and because it doesn't feel good. And the truth is that I don't know if a situation is good or bad in the moment, because I don't know the ripple effect that's going to have in my life. And I can think back to the moments in my life that were the most painful. And at the time I thought, this is terrible, this is bad, why is this happening? I should have known better, you know, all of these things. And the truth is, looking back now, I wouldn't change them 100%, because they, you know, tipped the scales a way that I didn't think my life would ever have gone down. You know, and the fact is, like, I have two, you know, situations in my life that were very scary and were very difficult and painful to go through. But without those, I wouldn't have found jiu-jitsu. So it's like now, especially, my life is so changed and so much richer because jiu-jitsu is such a big part of it.
Right.
If I hadn't had those things, I wouldn't have ever found jiu-jitsu. So how can I look back and label those things as bad? Because I would go through it again to be where I'm at today. And so that ability to look behind to see how that's affected me to where I'm at also gives me hope in the challenging times of knowing that I have no idea what ripple effect this is having for the future, but I'm going to trust that while I'm waiting, it's going to be good. And that's been a big lesson that I've learned, but something that is a deep, what I would call a soul lesson now that I carry with me into what I do.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, really. I mean, we're not Tony Robbins. We're not the greatest motivational speakers in the world. We're just everyday people going through the same types of struggles that other people are going through. I think we're kind of at different stages, and I think that's what makes our dynamic special in that regard. But hearing you talk about the things you're talking about, it stops so many people.
Right.
It really does.
Right.
And you do need to look back and sometimes take a hard look at, why am I self-sabotaging? But much like jiu-jitsu, you learn where those opportune moments are at where you're not going to be vulnerable. Unfortunately, our mind works in a way that says, hey, you ought to figure out why you're self-sabotaging yourself. And that's that kind of the devil on one shoulder saying, come on over here a little bit. I got something for you.
Right.
You know, it's usually, if you're not disciplined, then you're going to fall towards that. And then they become reasons instead of just explanations. And I think that's what gets people stuck so much, because we all have it.
Right.
You know, on that calendar of life and the trust, whatever your higher being is, that, you know what, I don't quite understand this, but you said the word trust. You trust that someday I'm going to look back and I'm going to see the value in all this.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm a firm believer too that, you know, what we focus on that's where our energy is going to go, you know, and that's another lesson that I've learned too, is that, you know, I can focus on why am I self-sabotaging and what are my limiting beliefs, but then I'm focusing on the things that are limiting me. So is there a place for that awareness to bring value? Yeah, there is. But at the same time, like, there's also arguably an even greater importance of looking at what belief will serve me instead. So rather than focusing on what's holding me back, let me acknowledge that that's there, put it aside, and say, what identity do I need to step into in order to move forward in this?
Totally.
And focus on that instead.
Yeah. Focus
You
on
know?
all the good things about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like that's something that's helped me tremendously, is you carry so much guilt about yourself, so much like shame from all the things that you know you could be doing and haven't done. And it's almost as though everyone knows that you're not doing them and you should. In your mind, it's like everyone around knows that you're slacking or knows that you're not living up to your potential, which isn't true.
Yeah, I was going to say, in your mind.
But in your
like
mind, you feel like everyone knows what's going on up here. And so you have so much guilt. You know, it's harder. It's you're fighting yourself and I lost my train of thought.
Well, to build off of that, you know, and to go a level deeper, you know, you start looking at the psychology and kind of the psychology of the subconscious too. And the fact is that we attract people to validate the negative beliefs that we have about ourselves, you know? And so if I think that I'm not good enough or that I'm worthless or whatever, then I'm going to attract people into my life that are going to affirm those feelings of not being good enough.
Right.
And we think that, oh, well, because they're treating me that way, then it must be true. But in reality, we are aligning ourselves with people that put that,
for sure,
you know, where we can kind of feel that. And so that's why the road of self-healing, or just healing, I would say, is so important, because again, what I've learned is that we can't give what we don't possess. Okay, so I can only put out into the world what I have within myself. So if my internal dialogue is negative, regardless of how positive I try and be, I'm going to be putting negativity out into the world, because that's what's flowing around my body. And that's what I'm going to attract into my life, is people that match that vibration. And so it's so important to be aware of our thoughts and to consciously choose to focus on the things that are good. And, you know, I went through this period where I thought that meant that I had to ignore the limiting beliefs that I had, or that I had to just kind of fake it till I make it. And it's so hard, because that's not the case either. Like, in order to turn a negative thought into a positive thought, I have to have the self-awareness to know what it is, to choose, do I want to keep this in my mind? So yeah, it's good. If I feel angry, then now I let myself feel angry, and I have to let that get out. And I've had times where I've been so freaking pissed off, like I have to go to the gym because I can't even think straight. I think I've had some times where I've gone to Jiu-Jitsu, and I try and be really mindful when I come onto the mat like that. But in this particular instance, I actually went to the gym, and I just like freaking tore up a workout, you know? And I mean, I think I even had some guy like come up to me and be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not freaking okay. Like, back up."
Step off.
Yeah. But by the time I got all of that negative energy out, that clearing allowed me to realize, like, oh, I'm actually really hurt about this situation right now. And it's because it struck a nerve within me that I had an expectation for this relationship, and, you know, I had to let that go. Like, that's that's not where it's going, or it wasn't what I wanted, and I'm really sad about that. And once I realized that, it was like I literally just felt this release in my body because I acknowledged it. Like, I think so often we want to bury that because, again, we think that it's bad.
Right.
But it has to come out. And so for me, I've learned I want to be in a place of control to where I want to let that thought come to the surface so that I can acknowledge it and be like, okay, Katie, I see you. And I hear that hurt. And okay, now let's choose, are we going to hold on to that, or are we going to let it go? And not just let it go, but look for the gold within that. Like, I can take that and say, you know, I care very deeply about other people and about relationships, and that's not a bad quality about me. I'm going to choose to see that as good and realize that in this situation, yes, I got hurt, but I still choose love, and moving forward, that's a value that I'm still going to hold on to. And now I walk away from that space with freedom and a totally different energy than if I hadn't allowed that whole process to happen.
Yeah, it's like changing your paradigms. That's what I was trying to say. It's like I had to change my paradigm to start believing that I was the good guy. Like, I had so much guilt and shame from being depressed for so long that I felt like I was the bad guy. You know, like I felt like the downcast, you know, the outcast, downtrodden of society, and that wasn't who I was. It was just I had so much guilt and shame, like for having depression. I thought everyone could hear it, you know, in my own head, and like I had to change my paradigm and start believing like you're the hero, you're the good guy, you know, and that's who I used to believe that's what I used to believe when I was a kid, you know, and even up until I was like probably 18 or 19 before like I just kind of got off track, like psychologically, you know, but I had to start changing my mind about who I was and start believing like you're the guy who's honest. You're the guy who speaks his mind. You're the guy who looks people in the eyes when you talk to them. You're the guy who makes people happy when you walk into the room, you know?
Yeah.
And that allowed me to start believing in myself in that way, in those moments, you know, and I could meet those moments and be that person because I was convincing myself over time, like when I wake up, like I'm this guy, I'm not the bad guy, like I'm the good guy today, you know, and that helped me believe in that part of myself. It's like you believe what you tell yourself. If you tell yourself that you should be ashamed of yourself, like you're a loser, like when was the last time you succeeded at anything, you know, like you start to believe that, and in those moments, that's the version of you that you are, because that's who you're talking to all the time.
Yeah, and that's the version of yourself that you are looking to affirm in the outer world. So if I'm telling myself like, oh gosh, like you never succeed at anything, then I'm going to see all of those times, even if I get a 99% on something, I'm going to focus on that, that I missed the mark and I didn't get 100%, you know, and we all have the power to create ourselves into whoever we want to be by choosing, you know, looking at who do I want to become. You know, if I were to meet myself 1 year from now or 5 years from now, like who do I want to be? Yeah. And just like you had that list, Anthony, that's so perfect, because that gives you that frame of reference for, you know, am I checking the boxes? Like, is this the person that's showing up when I walk into a room? And I think that's how we come to a place of like a deeper part within ourselves, like coming home to our truest self and living from that identity, you know? And in my experience, like in the beginning, it feels kind of awkward and it feels like maybe I'm an actor in my own movie. But just like anything with practice, all of a sudden, like, no, it's real life. Yeah. Like, this is who I am.
You just have to remember. Yeah. You know?
And I think I'm glad that you said that, because, you know, we do have to remember that is who we are. You know, it's just we've let the gunk from everything else kind of, like, we've chosen to put those rocks in our backpack and carry them, and we don't have to, you know? And so we gotta just drop that backpack and just be yourself. Yeah. Moral of the story, just be yourself.
That mindset, that's such a big piece in everybody's kind of journey. How did you guys adjust that mindset, because you're hearing that negative self-talk. You're shutting it off, but it's easy to shut it off, but then it's even harder to adjust it to something positive.
Right, yeah.
You can turn it
Well,
off and, I'm just not going to hear anything.
I don't think it's always easy to turn it off.
Mhm.
It wasn't for me.
No.
I mean, I had, like Anthony, you shared, like you had depression. I went through depression and anxiety as well. My mind is always like on the go. One of the things recently, because it's an ongoing journey for me, one of the things recently that I did was I've started doing strength and conditioning, getting back in the gym for that. And I was on the elliptical the other night, 45 minutes, and I already said in episode 1 how I feel about running. And I was just like, okay, 45 minutes, And one of the things that I do just in general is I'm always like having conversations in my mind, or like playing out scenarios, like thinking through every possible way any interaction can go. And when I was on the elliptical, I started doing that, and time passes so fast, right? And so what I started doing was I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to have the elliptical be my time that I'm going to obsess. Like, I can only obsess about things when I'm on the elliptical.
Mm-hmm.
My next thought was I should probably buy an elliptical so that I can have it at home. If that gives you an insight to how my mind works. I was like, man, I'm going to get in such good shape.
20 hours a day.
Yeah. But no, and I mean, I joke, and I haven't been on the elliptical since then. But what it did make me do was realize when I was obsessing, like since then, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm not on the elliptical, so I'm going to let that go because I want to live in the now. And the other thing I started doing was, when I started like playing conversations in my head that could possibly happen but hadn't happened yet, I stopped it, and I asked myself, is this a path that I want to go down? Like, do I want to have this conversation in real life? And if it was yes, then I reached out to the person and I had it. And that was really powerful because it put me back in cause also. And if it was no, then I just said, you need to let it go and set it aside. So in short, to answer your question, I would say to me, it comes back to consciously choosing to either continue or to stop or to change. So I have to be aware of the thoughts that are going through my mind. That's that conscious piece. And then I'm going to make the choice of where to go. Sometimes it might be, no, I want to obsess about this. And I say, okay, well, that's your 20 minutes you want to spend on that, Is that really the type of person you want to be? And it goes back to like that list. It's like, no, it's not. So what are you going to choose instead?
Yeah.
What about you, man?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think mindfulness and, like being self-awareness, it's about developing that like awareness tool. Like I call it, like in my book I wrote about it. It's called I call it the master mind. Like, you have to realize that you're in control of your mind, and there's a mind that's happening most of the time subconsciously. And when that script runs off without your direction, like, you can always like turn that root access at the admin control of your mind on, and like rewrite the script, and like developing that muscle of like tuning into your mind when it's taking off without you. Like, that's what I've worked on, I think, the most. And I think that's taken me years and years to figure out, and I'm still, sometimes I feel like I'm incredible at it. It's like jiu-jitsu. Sometimes you feel like a black belt, and then maybe the next week or a month later you feel like a white belt again, And so it's an up and down thing. I think there's layers to your subconscious that you need to peel back. But I think mindfulness is a big factor. Just the tools that help me gain mindfulness and self-awareness, like books, therapy, meditation.
Yes.
Like, without those tools, I wouldn't have the ability to develop my self-awareness, And so it's taken years and years to develop my self-awareness to where it is now from where it was. But I think it was those tools that helped me accelerate my development,
And I'd like to add to that because, Anthony, I really appreciate you saying years. because I was the same. I spent 5 years in therapy when I was going through depression and anxiety. It's very much about the long game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the other thing too that's been helpful for me is realizing what tools are effective when I'm not experiencing the obsessive thoughts or the panic attack or whatever else. Like when, because I used to get panic attacks too. So when I was having a panic attack, that was not the time to think, I wonder what self-awareness tool would be helpful for me right now. Like I wasn't in a space to do that. So I had to have a plan in place. And I mean, not like anything crazy, but just to know, for me, exercise was huge. And so when, like I shared that example for when I got really angry, you know, and I just had all this emotion, I know that going to the gym helps me let off steam. And so when I was in that place where I was so mad, it was like I didn't have to think about it. I already knew I'm going to go to the gym because I already know that that's going to help, you know? So that's a big thing too, is just, and that takes time and practice and figuring out like what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Coloring doesn't really work for me. So, I mean, it's cool. Like I need to go like punch something. Now I sound violent. I'm a very nice person.
Yeah.
Beast.
How about you, Kev?
You know, many years ago, I'm a big bell-shaped curve guy. The whole world is a bell-shaped curve.
Okay.
Most of it's right in the middle. You got your outliers on each side of it. And as I would always been very good at reading people, very intuitive to people. But very early on, I had to realize that I would never be 100%. I won't bat 1,000. It's impossible. I don't have all the inputs. I don't have all the inner workings of somebody on why they're going to make a decision or if they're going to make a decision. So I came to that grip of, hey, it's a bell-shaped curve. If I'm 80%, I'm doing pretty well. And then I started to incorporate, I called it my 360 approach, to look at a problem from 360 degrees. Then I gave that negative talk in my head, I gave it a space, but it was a very 10% piece of that 360. And it was one of the inputs that I could look at in evaluating a situation. Now I didn't have to ignore it, but I just moved on to the next, to the next. Compartmentalized it and continue to look all the way around that 360 and then put it in that bell-shaped curve kind of mentality. That allowed me to adjust my mindset to kind of keep going. I mean, that was a big eye-opener for me. It changed how I looked at problems and myself, my self-talk, everything was by going in that compartmentalized, recognize I'll never know all the answers, but I'm going to look at it as much as I can from 360. Yeah, that's an old thought. That's the way I used to think, but that's also a legitimate thought. Maybe there.
For sure.
You know, but I'd keep moving all the way around the circle. And that each step in that circle, that negative self-talk got smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah.
I think another thing that's helped me too is looking for the things that I'm grateful for, looking for the positives, because it can be so easy to focus on the negative, but even in the hardest times of my life, you know, to be able to stop and say, what is good right now? And what can I be thankful for? And that really shifts my internal dialogue and just how I feel within myself, and shifts it very quickly. So that's something that's been really helpful for me too.
Yeah, gratitude. It's funny. It's like, you know, it's a cliche and it's like super easy to say, and it's like it goes back to jiu-jitsu. Like it's one of those practices where like in the beginning it's not super effective, but the more you practice it, the more effective it gets. And lately I've been practicing it so much that, you know, what I try to do, my philosophy lately is just like try to live today like it's the only day you're going to be remembered for. And it might end as though it could be your last one, you know? And like if you had to do everything today as if everyone is going to remember you for just this day, like how would you live it, you know? And that helps me remember that like to be grateful for the moment, to be grateful for the day as if it's the only one you're going to get, you know, because when you go to sleep, you're not guaranteeing you're going to wake up. You're just kind of like making a deal with the universe, like, hey, I'm going to go to sleep because I'm feeling like sleeping. I'm tired. Wake me up in the morning, you know, like you're kind of just guessing you're going to wake up. So like I try to practice gratitude in a way that like living a one-day life and not expecting to live tomorrow, but, you know, living as though I'm going to be remembered for everything I did today, the way that I'm supposed to do it, you know? And so I think that's like, to me, the summary of gratitude is realize that you're not affording your existence. It's a gift. It's being given to you.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
That actually made me think of a question. So if you had to summarize your life philosophy, what would that be?
I think it's my life philosophy is that we're all remembering where we came from, and our job here is to remember who we really are, and that is that we are, in essence, God. We are connected to God because we are animated by God. Like we are, whether you call God the universe or quantum physics, quantum reality, or whatever is originating this moment, like we're not originating it. So we're a part of this thing that's going on. And as we age, we realize things about ourselves and and our relationship with the universe. And it's a lifelong lesson, and we're here to learn that lesson regardless of what it is. So my philosophy is that we're here to remember who we truly are, and all the things that we experience are lending us to that knowledge of our truth.
Yeah.
Of our eternal truth.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Kevin?
You know, it takes me, and I don't know if it's Confucius or the Dalai Lama said it, but we have two lives. The second begins when you realize you have one. You know what I mean? And that really hit me in the last probably 5 years. Maybe coincidental that Jiu-Jitsu was there at the same time, but I started to realize that. And two, to be a little bit more, I've always been a very grateful person, positive person, but to continue to be grateful for those things and then appreciate the people that, like you two, I crossed paths with you, and I sat on this for 6 months and thought about it.
Yeah.
And then I said, nope, 2020, it's going to happen. You know, so I think my philosophy has changed because I've lived that kind of positive life in that regard, and that doesn't mean all things always worked out for me. I had lots of trials and tribulations, but I've not lost that belief in love and that belief in the universe and that there's something bigger at work here. And I'm actually to the point in my life where I'm a very spiritual person, so I'm looking forward to what's next. You guys know I had a kind of hernia surgery and was going to go under and everything, and it was like, yeah, this is it. I was kind of ready to go, you know. But that gratitude, I think you hit on that. I appreciate what we have. Jiu-Jitsu's also made me think I can't take a year off. My clock is ticking. How much more can I do it? I always worry every injury I get. Like, is this the one?
Right.
That they say, you're crazy, what are you doing? You know, the eye doctor said that when I detached my retina.
Oh my gosh.
And he says, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing jiu-jitsu. Oh, no, you shouldn't be kicked in the head. I go, well, they don't kick you in the head, not on purpose. You know, he just pictured, you know how it is when you tell people you do jiu-jitsu,
Right.
they picture MMA.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like the clock is running out on me now. You know what I mean? And I wish I would have had that 10, 15 years ago, to tell you the truth. But no time like the present. And so I'm going to embrace that and move that.
Right.
Yeah. So
How do you feel time has changed your philosophy?
a little more sense of urgency, less tolerance with people. Like I mentioned earlier, I kind of got to a point where I really selected who I was going to work with, the people I
Mhm.
was going to align with, because I usually work real close with business owners. And if I'm not in alignment with how they believe, I probably need to do something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel good about those things now. I've kind of adjusted that. So, but I think too, you respect yourself, respect what you're standing for, and don't ignore it. And if it's causing you some angst, there's a reason for you to look at it. You know what I mean? Good, bad. Otherwise, sometimes it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things are uncomfortable that we go through. Being in a triangle from Ron is very uncomfortable, you know, and it's inevitable, you know. It's going to happen. And don't go to sleep. The room gets very white and quiet, you know, it's time's a ticking. But yeah, no, I'm just respecting that. I kind of look at life now through jiu-jitsu glasses in that I'm a black belt and things I do at work every day.
Right.
But there's other things that I'm not. There's other things I'm a blue belt. There's other things I'm a white belt at, you know, but I can appreciate it through that lens now that I didn't before. I felt I had to be this. I had to be at the top on everything.
Right.
And that's not, we're not built that way as human beings. So, yeah. Yeah.
Katie?
Let's see. I think that what my life philosophy would come down to is I really believe that we are here to love, and that love is really the biggest and most driving force it is in my life. And I think that, you know, we have the power to change the world with how we love. And so there's a lot wrapped up in that for me. Part of my journey too has been, you know, as love has been such a deep philosophy for me, and that has changed over the years. I've also come to a place where I've realized that, you know, the level of love that I'm able to put into the world is a direct representation of the level of love and understanding that I have for myself. And, you know, I feel like especially the last few years, self-love has been very popular. And in some places I think it can be twisted or looked down upon as, no, it's more important to love God or to love others. And I think it's all true. You know, for many of my years, I loved at the expense of myself, and that's not healthy. And it wasn't until I'm still going through this, but I've come to a place where, you know, I do love myself, and I do value myself, and I do like myself too. And I say that because I've realized that the deeper that I understand myself and have a love for who I am, I'm able to approach other people with that same level of understanding and love and grace and whatever. And I see the ripple effect that it has, because people don't live like that. Some do. But, you know, the amount of times that, like, I've talked to people and, you know, I remember things that they tell me, and I ask them about it the next time I see them, and they say, "What, you remember that?" I'm like, well, of course I do, because I was actually listening and I care, you know? And sometimes that makes people uncomfortable, to be honest. And I've learned to realize that people's receptivity of love that I put out doesn't negate the fact that I'm loving. You know, if someone is uncomfortable with it, I mean, granted, now I'm saying this with, like, I don't just, like, go around, you know, I don't know. I'm not, like, weird about it, okay?
Group hug.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I am weird about it. Someone's going to be listening and be like, "Whew, yeah, you know, too much, Katie." But what I'm saying is that, you know, I really value seeing people. And what I found is that, I don't know, I guess just that the more that I'm comfortable with myself, the more that I'm able to give to other people. And my life philosophy is that it all comes down to love. Like, you know, if I love someone, then I'm not going to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to think about what's best for them, and I'm going to do what's best for them, while still holding the boundary of what's best for me too, and kind of being in that middle space.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a real driving force for me is to love. And another value, very strong value that I have is to honor the callings of my soul. And so like Kevin, you talked about, you know, you felt like bringing us together, like you felt that. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that's a calling of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you waited for 6 months, I think the timing that it happened in was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back through and think of like, okay, what was I doing 6 months, like before we got together? But I do know that like the way it's unfolded, I truly believe that that's how it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't believe in coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in, I don't quite know how to put this succinctly, which you might be like, well, obviously, Katie. But I am a firm believer that there are opportunities to see God everywhere. Anywhere that, like, anywhere you want to look, there's an opportunity to see him at work. And the only thing that gets in the way of us seeing him or not is if we're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that definitely is a driving factor in my life. So those days that feel very mundane, if I start to get in kind of like that negative cycle, one of the other ways I pull myself out is I think, okay, how can I see God today? You know, and maybe that's something like, you know, my mom told me a story last night, actually, that she went to the graveside of one of my brother's friends who passed away a few years ago. And she was sitting out there and just kind of had the thought of like, you know, I wonder if he knows that I'm here right now. And she said that there were these like pinwheels, you know, that were stuck in the ground right there. And as soon as she thought that, they started spinning. And she was kind of like, okay, well, you know, maybe it's just the wind, whatever. And they stayed spinning until she thought, oh, I should probably get up now and go. And then one of them stopped. And when she stood up, the second one stopped. And she still was like, well, maybe it was still the wind. And when she got to her car and drove away, none of them were spinning in the cemetery. And it's like, you can listen to that and think, oh, well, yeah, maybe there was a breeze that came by. I listen to that and think Michael was there, you know? And so that's another big life philosophy for me, is that, you know, the veil between our physical world and the spiritual world is so thin that I can see glimpses of God all the time if I look for them, whether it's in moments like that, whether it's in conversations with people, whether it's, you know, in having a really good jiu-jitsu session. You know, there's a spiritual element to that too. And so I think those are the big things right now. Love, and like God is everywhere, leaving opportunities for us to see him if we choose to open our eyes.
God winks.
Yeah,
They're
for
God
sure.
winks. Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And I like what you share too, Anthony. And to me, all of them, like what we share, I see like how it all ties together. But I like what you said too about, you know, our life is about remembering who we truly are. Because I think that all of the like quote unquote negative stuff, it's just hurts that we've acquired, that it's our job to wash that off, like to peel back those layers and get back to our truest self. You know?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I just think like we start rolling, we start going, and every day you just wake up and pick up where you left off. Yeah. And rarely do you give yourself a chance to stop and say, what's going on here? And I don't just mean what am I doing with my life. I mean, what is my life? Like, what is this? Like, who am I? Why am I? What does it mean to be human? What am I supposed to do? And how long am I going to be here? Like, who asks themselves these questions, you know? And it's rare that we get a chance, because life is just going so fast.
Right.
And so I think it's just life is just a dance of like continuously remembering that you are a part of God, and that this is a moment that like God and you are sharing alone. Like, there's other people around, but like the first person, you know, like everyone you meet is outside of you. The only person that you meet in your life that's not outside of you is God. And like God's there at the beginning, and God's there the last person that you talk to, you know? And so like you have to decide what that means, what words you want to use to describe that. But like whether you describe it or not, like when you die, even if there's other people in the room, in that limbo, it's just you. Like, what are you going to do? That's the most important moment of your life. And so like while we're here, there's a ton of things we can do, but let's try to figure out what it's all about, because like in the end, you're going to want to know before you check out. You're going to have a few seconds to decide what you're going to think last, you know?
Well, and what I love about that is that we do focus so much on what am I going to do. I think even like I've gotten stuck in this trap of what am I going to do for God, you know, or what am I going to do with my life? And you know, what I'm hearing you say is that it's not about the boxes that we check. It's about who we are as people that matter. And it's hard, because that takes that self-reflection. And honestly, I think to really get to the core of who you are, you're going to go through an existential crisis, because it's breaking that, you know, those beliefs that have been put on you since like everything that you learned. I mean, essentially that's what I went through. Was I hit this point where it was like everything that I had learned kind of came crashing down, and I had to figure it out and rebuild it. And yeah, it came full circle, but we all go through that in our own way, you know? So I think too often we focus on what we do rather than who we are in the midst of that doing. And we've talked about it many times looking at jiu-jitsu, you know, when we step on that mat, we're not qualified by what we do. And most of the time we don't know what anyone else does. 23 hours a day that we're not on the mat together, you know? And yet we still connect with one another, because it's on a deeper level. It's based off of who we are and how we show up.
Yeah, totally. It's funny how you can get into the perspectives, the smaller worldly perspectives in certain times of your life, and just totally forget about the real game you're playing. You know, like I got super into business. Like, I'm just gonna master business, get a big fat bankroll, regain my time, and then I can focus on living the life I want to live. And like I got super into that. And that wasn't even like what I wanted my whole life, but like I just all of a sudden became super focused on just this, like one little thing, you know, 18 hours of a day, you know, just focusing on growing a business. And like all I ever wanted to do when I was a kid was like travel the world and preach the gospel. Like that was my goal. What does like, you know, like me focusing all my life learning business have to do with that? But the reason why I came to business was so that I could live a life like that, you know? And so we spend a lot of our time just focusing on like, you know, running on the hamster wheel, and forget about what we're doing. And the context of our life, the narrative of our life becomes that small little component, because we just lost sight of what we were really doing, which is like our vision, our dreams, our childhood dreams. Like people forget those and just leave them, but you can like remember them or pick them up at any time, start them over again. But it's just all about your story, the story that you're writing. You know?
And personally, I think that that's when we get to that point of being depressed or anxious or hitting that wall, you know, where we end up having that crisis, because we've been pursuing this dream for so long, I should say dream with a small d, you know, and realize like, wait, what am I doing? What does this even matter? Like, this isn't even what I want. This isn't even the life that I wanted to live. I'm so unhappy. And we blame other people. You know, we blame our job. We blame our partner or significant other, like, you know, we blame our boss or whatever, and it's like, no, I traded in my big dream without even realizing it, like, for what, you know? And I think that's when we get unhappy.
Yeah, I traded leaving home in Elk Grove Monday mornings at about 5:30 in the morning and coming home on Fridays. And I missed my boys. I missed probably 8 years of their lives when they were growing up. Now I regret that tremendously. But I was caught in the hamster wheel, thought that's what I had to do. And I was chasing the work, chasing the money that was with the work. And now as I look back, I was foolish.
Yeah.
I was really foolish. I love hearing your guys' perspective because you don't have to go through what I went through to get to that realization. You've got it already so that you won't take that for granted.
But would you say, looking back, that there's some, for lack of a better word, like gold that you can find and appreciate in those 8 years?
For myself, I think there was a lot of growth and me doing it on my own and making it happen and all that. But there was a sacrifice. It's like what you're saying. There was a trade.
Yeah.
I did not realize what I was signing over. There was fine print that I didn't read. That was pretty obvious if I just would have looked at it. You know, is this really going to be worth it? Think about it, you know. But I did. I made a bargain and I made a trade, and I gave up something that was worth 10 times more than what I got.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that's kind of part of wanting to have conversations with you guys, is that if we can share some things that others may hear, that, you know, we're not living in $1 million homes up on the mountain or anything. You know, we're just trying to live a good life and do the right things and be fulfilled and strive and do that, and not wake up 10 years later and have that regret.
Yeah.
Right.
And time will give you that context, you know, and that's why I like hearing from you, because, you know, like I look at my struggles and it's such a short window of time, you know. I just got out of high school 10, 11 years ago. So like that window is just, it feels like one bracket of time, you know, and so I don't have a super big context to see what my life, how much of a difference that's going to be in the context of 50, 60 years of my life. You know, what will this 5 to 10 years journey look like 50 years from now, you know? And so I like to like hear people who have been in the game for 20, 30 years, because I want to know what the context of time is going to look like, you know?
Right.
And so like, me and Katie, like, you know, we're still new to the self-employment and stuff. So it's great to hear your story of like, you know, you've been in business for this long, and you know, the struggles, would you say they get easier over time as you learn the lessons?
They're different. Because my perspective's different. You know, so I think that's a bigger thing with you internally discovering what's important to you and putting those things in the right order versus what you think ought to be important.
Right.
You know, if thinking, oh, I got to make so much money and all that, that money's gone. That money's gone a long time ago.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And here I gave up all this.
Right.
You can always
You
replace the
spent
money.
the money, yeah.
But you can't replace the time with people that you care about,
Yeah.
bringing up, influencing them. So yeah, no, that's something that it made me look at, it's why I want to compete a lot in jiu-jitsu, because I don't want to have regrets anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was something competing was always important to me early in my life. And then I was away from it because I never thought I could compete again physically, just in my life. They always say you find jiu-jitsu. When you find jiu-jitsu, that was the right time for you to find it, you know? I wish I could have seen what I could have done in my 20s doing jiu-jitsu, just my physical attributes then compared to now. and to be able to let that kind of sink into your soul, that kind of regret. I just don't want to feel that regret anymore. And it really changes how I look at my decisions I make, how from business to anything, because that regret, I have to say, is the hardest thing for you to sit down when your life is towards the end, looking back. It's better to have done it and failed than not to have done it at all, obviously. I mean, it's so cliche, but man, there's so much power.
It's a cliche, but you hear everyone say it. I wrote it in my book. That's like how I opened my book. It's like that's the one thing people regret the most, or say that they regret the most on their deathbed, is that they just didn't do the things that they always wanted to do. You know, and like that's a real feeling that almost everyone is gonna feel, because there's always something. Like even with me, I regret the years I spent depressed and clueless. I didn't know, but you know, I regret all the wasted time and wasted opportunities. You know, it's years and years. So, and the early 20s is what I wasted, and those are the best part of the 20s. You know, so it's like I feel the same way. You know, like 23 to 26 or so, 22 to 27, I didn't believe in myself. You know, it's like, so much I could have gotten done with self-belief, you know, at that time.
But it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, you know, that if, let's say you did have the self-belief from 22 to 27, you wouldn't have written this book. Right. You wouldn't have had anything to write this book about, you know. And Kevin, you wouldn't have the perspective that you have today if you had spent those 8 years any differently, because the opportunities that you had and that you took wouldn't have gotten you to where you are today. You would have been on a different path. Right. And so I think that's, for me, that's the plumb line that I have in my life, is that like I can spiral about, I wish I would have done this, or, I wish I would have taken the leap of faith sooner, or, you know, have I just wasted all this time in, you know, this job or whatever it is, and I will drive myself crazy. You know, I don't have that many hours to spend on the elliptical. So, you know, I just have to look at it and say, you know, for me, I believe in a higher power that does have purpose in every single thing. And that, you know, the path that I'm on, does that leave opportunities that I didn't take? It does, because I chose something else. But it's still good, and I wouldn't trade that, because it's made me who I am today. And so that's been a huge like place of security for me to come back to. And also one of the other lessons I've been learning lately is, you know, at so many times in my life I've wanted to have things figured out, you know, and I thought, if I just made more money, then I'd have more peace, because I'd have more financial security, or I'd be able to get out of debt, or I'd be able to pay off my car, blah, blah, whatever it is. You know, if I just got married, then I'd be happier, you know, whatever. And it's like, that's not true. You know, all of those things that I'm chasing, that I think something else is going to solve, like I already had that ability to create that with the circumstances I have right now. You know, I wanted to get my finances under control. And so last year, that's what I focused on. And I was super diligent, and I've been faithful in the little. And now a year later, I am amazed at like the bounds that I've come from where I was. And it's like, to be honest, my salary didn't change, you know, and to see that it was about putting energy into something, that my mindset about it changed. And so the output changed. And, you know, there isn't a magic pill to fix anything. You know, what I've learned is that it's making the decision to choose a path, and then continuing to decide to go down that road every single day. Because it's something that's important, you know, like, and whatever that is, you know, we have that power to choose. And I also think that's what makes us human too, you know, and you look at that in the context of regret, and, you know, that's why we have regret. Right. Too. It's because we have the power to choose, you know, am I going to go home and watch 3 hours of TV? Okay. Sometimes yes, because I want to get through the season of Hell's Kitchen. But no, most of the time, no, because I realize like there are other things, there are other dreams that I have, and right now I'm committed to a full-time job, and I'm committed to training jiu-jitsu, and I'm committed to building like my own things outside of that, and I'm committed to writing a book, and I'm committed to the people in my inner circle and my family. There is not much more room in my life. Like I'm gonna have to adjust something here pretty quick. But do you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
Yeah. I'm conscious about choosing, and that's where I see the growth, even if it doesn't look like it on the outside.
Yeah, and it's hard. You know, when you identify that, it's like you said. It's like you said, Kevin, too. It's like when you identify your vision, and then you start like living that. Like that the time you're investing is worth it. You're never gonna regret getting your blue belt. You're never gonna regret getting your purple belt. Like, you spent a lot of time getting it, but you're never gonna regret that.
Right.
So you know, like, you can keep on that road because you're not gonna regret that.
And just hearing you tell your stories and me saying mine out loud, that regret, like you're talking about that time in your early 20s. You're a black belt in depression now.
Right, exactly.
And you can teach others.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
How to get out of it, not how to be depressed.
Right.
Yeah. How to survive it, though.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and how to turn it around. Yeah, and I think that's what this journey is about too. Is like we can go through hard stuff and be like, man, that really sucks, and leave it there. Or we can go through the journey and be like, yeah, that sucked, I'm never going back. Or we can go through the journey and be like, man, that really sucked, I wish I had this support in the midst of it, and next time I encounter someone who's going through that, I'm going to turn around and reach my hand back and help. And that's, to me, that's what it's about too.
That's kind of what all our lives are about with the coaching, the consulting.
sure.
It's like the contribution, and that's why we kind of came together on this. It's like we all have uniqueness, and we want to contribute, as much as possible. So coming together on this was like our opportunity to kind of find a way, like, how can we come together, join forces, and try to offer some perspective and contribution to like whoever might hear it.
Yeah.
No, mine's about getting rid of that regret I have with not being there for my kids, so I can pass it on to you guys, so I don't have to worry about it
there
anymore.
you go.
Thank you. We'll take it.
You take it.
Definitely.
Yeah. But it is, you look at regret differently then.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the context of our conversation, I look at that regret differently right now. And it's amazing what a simple conversation amongst 3 people can change your perspective on something.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's why we're here.
That's what we do.
Good stuff.
Boom.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah.
You bet.
Follow us online. Follow Kevin.
KRWCCO.
CCO on Instagram. At P-Style on Instagram.
And at Legit Katie Williamson.
That's it. Get a hold of us, guys. Thank you so much.
You can find me on Instagram at Legit Katie Williamson and online www.katiewilliamsoncoaching.com. And you can find Kevin Roland on Instagram
At KWRCCO or my website, www.kwrcco.com.
You can find me at P-Style on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look me up, Anthony Polanco, or anthonypolanco.com. Check it out. Got a ton of stuff on there for you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Life Off the Mat.
Thanks for listening to Life Off the Mat.
Thanks for listening to Life on the Mat.
Off the mat.
Thanks for that.
Off the mat.
On and off the mat.
Thanks for listening to Life Off the Mat. We'll see you next time.